Good evening. Welcome to the January 17, 2019 Auburn Zoning Board of Appeals. The meeting this evening is being recorded. I'm going to ask anyone in the audience if they're also recording. I'm seeing none. Okay, so we have this evening, Happy New Year. This is our first meeting of the year. And so we have one hearing and some administrative, one request for extension and then some administrative work to do this evening. Before we get started, we are absent two of our regular board members, Mr. Petro and Mr. Cussy, and so piece of administrative business, I'm going to ask our two alternates, Ms. Blaze and Mr. Jones, if they would step forward as voting members this evening.
Okay.
Without objection. And so that would give the board a full complement vote. And so we can start a few minutes behind schedule, but I think we can make up some time. So our first hearing this evening is applicant Dorothy Page requesting special permit under section 8.2.3 of the Auburn zoning bylaws to allow the extension of a non-conforming use on property located at 230 Leicester Street, Auburn, Mass, map 39, parcel 25. Is the applicant present? Okay, if you could approach the lectern. And so if I could have the motion to open the hearing?
Motion to open?
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So we're open, so if you could state your name clearly, ma'am, and tell us why you're here.
All right, my name is Dorothy Page, and so I purchased the property on 230 Leicester Street a couple of months ago. I think if you have a copy of the tax card, you'll see the picture of it that shows that it was badly burned. Last year, I renovated a property on 236 Leicester Street, added on a couple of porches, and you may have pictures of that also, that we completed that, that renovation. Well, I'll give you a little history on 230. While we were doing the renovation on 236, the house on 230 caught on fire. And the woman that lived there was the granddaughter of the original person that built it. And she had, they barely escaped. It was only because there was a dog that woke them up, she and her 20-year-old son. So the house was declared uninhabitable, and she had no insurance on the property. So she came up to us because we were working two houses up the street and basically asked if we were interested in purchasing her property. So we said we would. And I enclosed for you the original contract that we found in the rubble of the house. The picture that was drawn by the builder in 1960 when the house was built, and the original contract that indicates it was built as a duplex back then for $2,000 in 1960. So I've included that, and I think the request today is because it's a non-conforming lot based on the east side of the property, and based on the fact that the front porches come within the 30-foot setback. There already was a front porch, as you can see from the picture on the tax card, that came out almost 5 feet. That porch was destroyed by the fire, and what we want to do is to replace that porch as well as a porch right next to it, so that there'll be two separate entrances for the house and retain it as a two-family. So that's one thing that we'd like to do, is to put two porches on the front of the house. The other thing is to, on the right side of the house, is to go up and put on a second floor with 2 bedrooms on the second floor, but it would not increase the number of bedrooms. Right now, there's 3 bedrooms on one side, 2 bedrooms on the other, and it would retain that. It would still have 5 bedrooms for the entire house. So that would not be changed. So those are the issues that I think are before that I needed to come to you with.
Okay, all right, thank you. Before we open it up to the board for questions, just for clarification, so what's before us this evening is a special permit application. to essentially extend the non-conforming use of the property. Okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and open it unless you have any additional comments.
No, unless you have questions, and I'm not sure what that means, non-conforming. I mean, it's a house, it's not a tent, so I'm not...
All right, let me continue along that line before I open it up to the board. And so then we have from Jay Gallant, who's the project architect.
Correct.
And we have a letter here that indicates specifically in the second paragraph of his brief, the property is non-conforming with the current lot size and frontage requirements of the zoning bylaws of the RB zoning district, and the existing home was built within the front and west side yard setbacks. And so no mention of the porches in that statement for the nonconformity, but in fact, just as I interpret, and we'll open it up to the board to explore as well, but for the zoning bylaws, the nonconforming use is specific to the current lot size and frontage of the structure.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up to board members, and so we typically start on this side of the room, but I'm going to give Ms. Chicolo a break and go to some of the women first. So, Ms. Blaze?
I don't have any questions, would be good.
Okay, very good. Mr. Jones?
I'll pass for the moment.
I'm sorry?
I'll pass for the moment.
Okay. Ms. Roach?
So I don't necessarily have any questions, but do you understand sort of what the chair was trying to make for the distinction? Are you
So it's about the porches?
exactly, so,
So there was an existing porch there.
right, so the permit that you have asked for tonight only speaks to the fact that you want to keep a two-family on a lot that is not big enough, period. Porches that are going to not comply with setback rules require a variance, just like you came and got on your other house. That is not on the agenda for today.
But it does address west front porch and east front porch in the letter?
Right, but the permit to come to this board and ask for a porch to be put on requires a variance. You have applied for a special permit.
Okay.
So the only thing that we can vote on today is whether or not to allow you to reconstruct a two-family on that lot. Porches, you'd have to come back for something separate.
To you?
Yes.
Okay. And what about the second story?
No, I think the second story is in accordance with the fact that it would be a house on a non-conforming lot.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think the second story enters into any of this discussion at all. That would be strictly a matter for the building inspector,
Okay.
okay? You're going up and you're not going beyond any zoning bylaws by doing that.
No. No.
I can address that. If they had chosen to rebuild the house exactly as it was, they wouldn't have had to come in front of us, because it was leaving it exactly as it had been. Because they wanted to add to the second floor, that's why they need to have the special permit for existing non-conforming use, because they are actually making it a bit larger than it used to be.
Excuse me, wouldn't they have had to come before us no matter what? Because this is a new owner, and the special permit does not continue as it was originally granted?
I can't say for
That would not continue
sure.
with this new owner.
But I do know that the size that they're adding to the second floor was part of it. They're changing the layout.
I appreciate the input. I mean, I think, so it's a size distinction, but their original lot nonconformity was for the original lot size, irrespective of the additional space. So they were non-conforming previously without the second story. They were non-conforming in my view. But point taken that the second story is adding additional square footage, which would determine it to be two-family that would be non-conforming on that lot size. So I think it aligns with the same argument that it's a non-conforming structure within that lot size that would have to be granted through a special permit.
And additionally, the fact that special permit does not continue to live with the new owner.
That's correct. I mean, they currently don't have a state of occupancy, and thereby they would have to permit it based on their nonconformity for that to continue. Makes sense. And thank you, Ms. Roach. And did you have any follow-up questions or comments?
As long as we're speaking only to the special permit about the nonconformity of the lot, I do not have any other questions.
Correct. That is what's before the board.
Then,
But, I
yep.
mean, if you have further, I mean, it looks like you might have additional questions for that. So we're not in a position this evening to address the two porches. And the reason for that is those would require a separate hearing, a separate application to address them through variances.
Okay.
Okay? So secondarily, that would be taken up as a separate matter.
So I need to come back before you with the porches?
You would need to reapply and discuss that with the building commissioner and reapply based on the setback requirements and what would you would need relief for those porches based on the setbacks that you have.
And if I built the porch exactly the way it was, would that require a permit?
So Caleb would need, well, certainly it would require a permit, but Caleb would need to advise on whether or not it conformed to current bylaws or whether or not you'd need relief. Depends on the size and the structure.
It's just I need access to the front doors, the two front doors of the property. So you're saying I need to just go back to Caleb and determine what I need to do?
We would advise that you circle back with Caleb, the building commissioner, and look at the size of those porches and address that secondarily as a separate issue than the special permit, because it's not covered under the special permit.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Cole?
was there, you're telling us there was an existing porch
Correct.
in the front.
Yes. And
Was there an existing porch or just a set of stairs to get in the other side?
no, there was an existing porch.
So there were two existing porches?
No, there was one porch that was extended beyond two doors. I'll show you the picture. Actually, this is the burnt picture, but this
Okay.
is the picture. It's actually on the tax card.
Yeah, we have that.
You have it. It's right in your packet.
So you see that,
And that extended beyond both doors?
correct, correct. You can see the bushes on both sides, but the porch went behind the bushes on both sides, and it extended for a good 10 feet, because both doors were there. As you can see, there's both doors there, and it extended beyond both doors. So it was probably, 10 or 12 feet.
So,
There
and
was
this is
room
the
where they
picture you're
actually had
referring to?
chairs on. They had chairs on that porch.
This is the picture you're referring to?
The one on the tax card that shows it burnt, the grass is long, there's bushes in
Yeah, I
front.
can't see that it goes beyond the other door. I see the front porch there.
Yeah.
And I see remnants of a
Bushes-
stairway
Some of
there.
those bushes hide it, but it does go, it went long enough that there were chairs on that porch.
So the secondary entrance,
Yeah.
were there stairs off of that, or were there just one set of stairs here, where you would come out the secondary entrance, walk that 10 or 12 feet that you just described, and then down the front set of stairs?
There was one set of stairs that were probably 5 feet wide.
Okay, so there was
That
one,
went down from that porch.
so there was one set of stairs?
Correct.
At that point?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the difference in the question about the setbacks, does the setback problem come into play because of the stairs to the secondary entrance, where there were no stairs before?
No, there were stairs there was one set of stairs.
Right.
Then you went up the porch, and left is one door, right is one door.
But as I see this plan, there are two sets of stairs.
That's correct. So what we wanted to do was to separate the two entrances to
Right.
the two apartments and leave one set of stairs where it was, basically.
Yeah.
And have the second entrance separate, only that I thought it was aesthetically nicer for each
But
side.
am I to be correct when I say the actual stairs, not the porch, because you could rebuild that the way it was, but the actual stairs are causing the issue with the setback?
No, the porch is actually, the original porch was closer than the setback.
It couldn't be.
It was.
If there was no stairs there before and the stairs are extending out front,
The original porch and stairs come closer than the 30-foot setback.
okay.
Am I not understanding?
Right. The second, as I look at the house,
Yes,
there is a porch that extends beyond both entrances to the house. There is one set of stairs to that porch,
correct,
and that is in the front.
correct.
To the left of that, as I look at the house,
Yes,
there were no stairs. The
There was-
porch was out front of the door, but there were no stairs, correct?
on the original house, it had one porch and one set of stairs.
Correct, so that, I'm going to ask the question again. As I look at the house and the left entrance, the porch extended beyond that, but there were no stairs at that point.
Yes, there was one porch with one
Right, I want
set of
her to
stairs.
agree with it, though.
Yes, there was not on there was only one set of stairs. There was
Okay.
not two sets of stairs.
So that by adding a set of stairs,
Yes,
that is what I am, and I do not like the word assuming, but I have to use it here. The actual stairs, I assume, are what's causing the issue with the setback, because those exacerbate any issue that there might have been with a setback.
so we can put the stairs to the side of the porch rather than the front, if that's a problem.
Now, is that where you are coming across the issue?
No. The porch itself without the stairs, on one side will be 18 feet from the road. And
Which side?
On
Which
the
side?
right side, where the porch was originally. Where the porch was originally,
And that's the porch at the front of the house.
correct.
That's 18 feet,
That was 18 feet without the stairs.
okay?
And the porch on the left, which would be the second entrance, would be 20 feet without the stairs.
So that the
The other porch, because of the way the road curves, the new porch is further from the road than the old porch.
so you're rebuilding this front porch differently?
Well, we're adding a front porch to the left side of the house, so they each have their own entrance.
So what you're doing is just separating the porch that was there?
Correct, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So all you're basically doing is taking a porch and extending it as you did before, but not allowing one person to walk through to the other side?
Correct, absolutely.
Okay. So that the actual set of stairs that are going in, as I look at the house on the left-hand side,
Yes,
okay, that setback, and it's, if there were a problem with setbacks, it would be to the front road,
correct.
and that is 20 feet versus 30 feet.
Correct.
Okay, but the actual porch that was there, okay, had to be the same, or are you want to make it 5 feet wide?
Well, the original porch that was there was 18 feet at its shortest point, but because the way the road curves, it was
Right.
20 feet at its longest part.
Okay,
So now, by dividing the porches, one porch will be 18 feet at the shortest.
Yeah.
And the other one will be 20 feet at its shortest.
but if you were rebuilding this, because you do want to rebuild it, but everything is basically going to be the same, except for you could say you could put a petition or stop it and restart it. Is that what you're going to do, stop it and restart it, or just put a petition?
No, there won't be a petition, it'll be two separate porches.
That's fine. So you're just separating what was there?
Correct. Correct.
If I understand, then the two new porches fall within the footprint of the old porch?
Yes,
Yeah.
We just want personal, we want to separate, like, you know.
I have them come up.
Sir, if you have comments, if you could go to the lectern, please, and state your name for the record, and make sure that everyone, including my wife who's watching litigiously, can see you.
My name is Frank Mallett, and I'm helping her remodel this home. But the thing is that we want to do that to make it a little bit more personal for when someone comes home, instead of bashing each other when they come to the front door. So we thought we'd take the porch and just kind of break it, put new ones in the same, make the left one go a little bit further to the left, and the one on the right's pretty well close to where it was. We just want to get a little bit more separate from each.
When the house was built, it was two brothers that lived there, so it was easier, I think, to probably share the location.
I have another comment, and that is that after listening to the applicant and her answers to the question, I don't think we need to separate this into special permit variance, because she is rebuilding the house. Pretty much, it's the same as what existed. So I don't think we need to break this apart into a variance. If there is any, and I'm only one person on this board, but if there is any issue where the majority of us feel that we still want to separate it, then I would think that the proper thing to do for the applicant would be to let her instead of paying a separate fee and separate mailings, to let her withdraw this application without prejudice, allow her to talk and sit with Caleb, the building inspector, and then get a redetermination from him about how we're to proceed, because we've got a special permit that's referenced, and in our document here, we have the word variances referenced. So I would think that that would just be better for the applicant to allow her to go about it that way, save her some money from reapplying with mailings and so forth. And just give her that option.
And this is because your interpretation is that she's merely choosing not to rebuild the middle of the old porch.
This is, no, it's not. My interpretation is exactly as I stated, and that is that she is going to be rebuilding this house, same footprint, same everything as it was. The extension of the permit would be to extend it to this new owner, if she decides to sell the house. The new owner would also have to come, because special permits don't live on. My statement that if there is any confusion with this, there isn't in my mind, but if there is, and the board sees fit to vote that way, as I stated, I'm only one vote, then I would like to give the option to the applicant to withdraw this application without prejudice, to allow her to speak and meet with Caleb, then get the clarification that's needed. That way we've saved her the money for a new application, mailing, and all of that.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. I'm going to go around the board one more time and see if there are any additional questions, and then ask a few. Ms. Blake?
I don't per se have any questions. I don't know if what he's suggesting is something that you want. My view is I think we should just not talk about the porches. The porches are not part of what we're voting on tonight. We're voting on just the non-conforming use of the property. If you need a special permit or a variance for the porches, that's a separate issue to be discussed with Caleb. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight to be able to address that right here. And that's just my opinion.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, the porches are, if you could see in the breach, the property is non-conforming with the current lot size and frontage requirements for zoning bylaws. And the porches are what create, part of what creates the frontage requirements.
Right, but that's an
So that I don't, I think that we possibly, in our original discussion, we could separate it into special permit and variances. Being that she's going to be rebuilding on the same footprint, it's the same house, okay? It's basically the same house, and I know it's going up in height, but it's basically the same house on the same footprint, okay? And she's well within her rights to do that. So that the confusion would be, in my mind, okay, not on what is stated here, the setbacks. I don't have any confusion on that right now.
Let me circle back to the building commissioner's office, if I may. So with the comments that you had shared earlier today,
Yeah.
the non-conforming use is based on the original footprint and size of the building. So your comment that they wouldn't have to come before the board if they weren't adding a second story, can you expand on that, please?
That's what Caleb told me, that if they didn't change the footprint at all, they would have been, because they actually applied for their building permit. It was rejected because the floor plan was different.
Okay.
Because they were adding on to the second floor.
Okay, and that lies, and thank you for explaining it that way, because that lies even, I'm a little more confused than I was before, but that's okay, and I'll explain why. So the footprint itself, a second story on an existing structure doesn't add to the footprint. It adds to the square footage, but the footprint, so in my view, your footprint is basically your layout, your foundational layout, porches, that drawing around the site. So if the dimensional space that's being increased adds to the non-conformity, it just, the way I read the brief, speaks to it was previously non-conforming, and this is an extension of that. So if the lot was previously non-conforming because we had a two-family on a lot that just wasn't big enough for a two-family, then what Caleb had shared, and I really appreciate your comments. I'm not trying to twist it, but I need to circle back with Caleb and understand that second story and how that plays into that. And shame on him for not being here. But I know he had good excuse. But I also want to lay credit to Mr. Cola's suggestion in that from a footprint perspective, if you're not changing the footprint and the porches play into that, my primary question would be, are they separate and can they be handled separate or can they be rolled into the same? If it's the same footprint and we address the nonconformity and extend that, are variances required, or by the special permit, are we then granting the nonconformity and the porches therein?
I would believe that the latter,
The porches therein?
because they were there. Because they were there. But again, as I said, I'm only one vote, so if there was any difference of opinion, definitely, I'd like to, the second point I brought up, I'd like to extend that to the applicant.
Okay. Recognizing that Caleb has a significant level of expertise in the area, and given his briefing advice to us to address the non-conforming use, specifically by special permit, I would be inclined to go in either one direction or advise them to do a continuance. The one direction I would advise is that we address the nonconformity in the special permit item. And then secondarily, they can resubmit, or if they so chose, to try to group them and gain some additional guidance from Caleb and come back and try to group them with the variances.
Mr. Chairman, you're saying if needed, they could go further.
If needed, they could go further. I mean, I for one would be in favor of addressing, based on Caleb's brief and his letter to the board directly, I would be in favor of addressing the nonconformity in the special permit and putting that back in his court to address whether or not they needed to go further on the porches and a variance. It would certainly, so let me get back to as we're kind of opening the this discussion and talking amongst ourselves. And so what we're trying to do is truly find the least aggressive path for you, and to essentially accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And it's also in us trying to interpret what the goal is. So our building commissioner had advised that this is a non-conforming use special permit hearing. And then we led with that, in separating the setbacks on the porches, which would need relief. So what my recommendation would be, and we'll certainly let the board speak collectively, but my recommendation would be that you could ask us to move forward, and we would address the special permit application directly and the nonconformity, and we would vote on that item directly. And you could circle back with the building commissioner and address any additional application process that you would need
Relative to the porches,
relative to the porches.
So you'd vote
on the permit to work on the, yeah.
That's correct.
Caleb and
That's correct. Also, that's correct. And also at your discretion, because I want to recognize the thoughtful comments of Mr. Chacolo, is that you would always have an opportunity to take back and ask for a continuance, thereby not having us vote on the special permit. Circle back and reapply once, apply the fees on the application and the advertising, and group them if you did need a second hearing to address the porches and the variances. And that's certainly, within your discretion to do so.
So you're saying that tonight we can separate it out and you can vote on the special permit and then bring back the issue on the porches at a separate time?
If in fact you would need to do so. What we would want you to do is to
Commissioner Caleb and let him just look it over and see
Yes,
what
sir.
we're doing?
We would want you to get some thoughtful advice on the best direction of whether or not, one, it was necessary, and two, if you need to reappear in the best way to do so. Or you could pull all of it back and address it in one hearing moving forward, either both, or if it's determined that only one is necessary. And I would give you that option to have you, and again, I'd ask the board members if they have any other options or any other comments to advise, because what we're trying to do is certainly be solution-based and offer you a path to succeed and move forward. I think that litigiously what we have before us is a special permit application to extend the nonconformity. And I would suggest that we could certainly vote on that piece specifically.
All right, so I think that makes sense, to let you vote on that piece, and then we'll manage the porches with Caleb.
It may not even be an issue.
It might not be.
As you heard me speak, the way I feel, I don't believe there's now an issue with those, and he may feel that way too, so.
Okay.
We're not changing.
I think your shortest path to conclusion is to have the vote on the special permit tonight.
Okay.
And in doing so, I mean, some of the information, thank you, that you have provided forward is that we can get some clarity on the fact that you're here because of the size of the structure and adding that second story. And that being forward even lends itself to needing a special permit based on the conformity of the size of the structure. Okay. Any additional comment? Any additional questions from the board?
I don't think so.
Okay. And I don't see any abutters, although for matter of process, I'll just ask if any abutters would like to speak. And pretty quiet audience this evening. Okay, thank you very much. I'll take a motion.
Motion to close.
I'll make motion to close.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, so voted. So I think what we have before us is, as been explained, an application for a special permit to extend the nonconformity of this lot. So is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Okay. A motion's been made and second. I'll go around. Any conditions? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there needs to be a condition put on that you don't have town sewer there.
I don't have what?
Town sewer.
No, we already have a septic design.
I believe the septic, the special permit contingent upon the septic approval.
So, Mr. Chacolo, is that so your vote is?
Affirmative.
Okay, to approve, and you would set special, so what I would recommend is we would do standard conditions in addition to the Board of Health approval on the septic system.
Right, we've already gone through that process, we've already had perk testing done, and now the engineers are drawing up.
The design.
Okay, no, that's fine, but what we would do is we would want to, what we're moving forward with, and
Can't get their permit without.
yeah, is essentially a condition of the permit, that it would need to go through Board of Health approval. Thank you. So, Mr. Chacolo, so I'll just go around the list, Ms. Blaze, and it's been seconded by Ms. Roach, and so, Mr. Jones?
Approve?
Okay. And the chair will approve. So approved, congratulations. And so special permit's been granted as applied for with the standard conditions, again, and we'll put in the decision as well as approval from the Board of Health on the septic system by the Board of Health.
All right,
Okay?
thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you very much. Okay. I know you don't have an updated agenda, but there was a second item that was added to the agenda. Longwood Development Corporation at 17 Mill Street had requested an extension, a one-year extension, and so they had provided the board and their attorneys, Mr. Broder, had provided a letter that circulated on email today, but essentially, based on some hardship and some other activities, they secured the property just this past January, and they weren't able to begin construction until much later than planned. So the request is, there were three approvals that were granted last January. So I'll walk through some of the history of this for the board, and then what's being requested by the Longwood Development Corp. So 17 Mill Street, there were three decisions that were granted back on January 18th of 2018. They were filed in February subsequently, and the appeal period had ended in March for those three decisions. And so based on some hardship that was shared through some correspondence to the building department and the attorney's brief, they're requesting a one-year extension of the term of the decisions. The decisions expire coming up this March 29, 2019. And so it's a request from this applicant to extend, extend by 1 year the decisions that would expire this March. And so I'd open it up to the board for any questions or comments on this action.
Questions?
Mr. Chacolo?
I do have a comment on it. I have no problem with it, and I have no problem voting on it. But in order to vote on it tonight, I believe at the time those decisions were made, Ms. Blaze was an alternate on the board and here for those hearings, so that our vote tonight would be a supermajority of 4 people. Mr. Jones was not part of the board, and I believe that you're only able to take the vote for the people. Be just like if somebody missed a hearing, they would have to watch it on TV. Ms. Blaze doesn't, because she was here for that. So that what we would be voting on would be a 4-, if we voted unanimously, it would be a 4-0 vote versus a 5-0 vote if we all voted in the affirmative. Kind of housekeeping.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chacolo, you raise a really good point, and so I agree with you. I think that, but my question would be back to the board on a feeling of, we're voting on the extension of those decisions, but not on the decisions themselves. And so it's semantics, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's kind
so I agree with you.
The special permits,
But the special permit,
they don't
so
require a supermajority, only a variance does.
they wouldn't.
But it would only, if we all vote in the affirmative, it can only be a 4-0, not a 5-0 vote.
And not, so, I understand what you're saying. Mr. Chacolo, I believe, and not trying to interpret for you, is essentially saying not for the need for a supermajority because of a variance versus a special permit, but because of one of our current voting board members was not present during the original approval of those decisions back in January.
It's just a matter of housekeeping.
Yeah, that could be true.
Does that approval have any bearing on this request, though?
No. I don't believe it does because it's been approved.
So,
This is just the time to act on that approval.
right, so thereby, and I, again, I think it's a thoughtful comment, but I think I separate the two from the position of, we're not relitigating the decision on the approvals where literally before us, essentially deciding whether or not that approval time period should be extended. So I would actually suggest that, I don't know, I could argue that it's not absolutely necessary that the original members vote forward. If we were comprised of a very different board, I think that we could still vote on just the extension of a previously approved decision.
And if you feel that all members present tonight can, that is fine. I'll go along with that.
a very good
Because I'm going to be voting in the affirmative anyways. So that.
But it's a good, but, you know,
But I would.
yeah, to be
I would-
conservative, it's a very good question.
Yeah, I would say that maybe to cover both bases, you can have a vote set aside if needed.
We could certainly cover that.
Yeah.
for,
In other words, put the fifth vote in parentheses if needed.
If we all vote the same way, then the challenge,
Yeah, and it's, so it,
It's not a challenge,
Yeah.
no, but I think from a conservative perspective, it raises a very good question.
yeah.
I truly do. Any other questions from the board? Okay. And so we can do one of two things, not to belabor this, but it was certainly the opinion of Mr. Broder that we could decide to move forward with a vote on this request, or we could request a continuance on this request and ask Mr. Broder to appear to defend his position of requesting the extension, which I personally don't feel is necessary, but I do appreciate his thoughtfulness and being willing to appear
Yeah.
at a forward time. So I think what we've come to the conclusion is the board is pretty comfortable with moving forward with the vote. So without any further, to hear the sound of my own voice, I'll go ahead and ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion to approve the requested one-year extension of the term of the decisions expiring on the 29 March 2019 for the Longwood Development Corporation with respect to 17 Mill Street.
And I'll second that motion.
And there's been a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The chair votes aye, and it is unanimous, 5 as well as 4. Thank
you go.
Thank you very much. And so we have a couple of housekeeping items. I'll just bring up, for matter of my own reminder, that conflict of interest is due this quarter for anyone that hasn't completed conflict of interest. And so that's on the statewide training for all of us, and that goes back to our filed once completion, certificate of completion goes back to our town clerk. And signatures, do we have signatures this evening? So we have 3 signatures and then minutes. While those are circulating, do we have any minutes to vote on this evening?
No.
Okay, so no minutes. And then a confirmation that our next meeting is February 21st, 2019. So we have decisions?
Yeah, just for the 3 of you.
Very good.
While we're doing some housekeeping, Mr. Chairman, our March zoning board meeting, I will not be present at.
Thank you. Duly noted that you will be in a much warmer climate.
Yes.
my signature shortened as soon as I started practicing.
Yeah, I figured yours was too.
Rich isn't here, so these can't be turned in, right?
Right.
But, and he may have, he might have an opportunity to.
He'll have
back
to
in.
take a drive up.
Yeah, very true.
And Bob has to sign it.
Yeah, Bob needs to sign as well. I think that's everything. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for adding your comments.
Motion to
I
adjourn?
appreciate it. It was helpful.
Yes.
Don't think it wasn't. It was absolutely helpful. Okay, no other business. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.